Hi, everyone, and welcome back. If hopefully most of you stuck around for that short transition, and if anyone's just joining us, we're moving into our next session, a great panel discussion, moving the metal, or keeping the metal moving. We're going to be looking a bit more into some wider issues in finished vehicle logistics. We just had a great case study from Daimler, from Schmickler, about the QDO, about a quality management system that the car maker has recently implemented, and now I'm really pleased to we're going to be welcoming a few more panelists to our stage. Just a few words before we start there, maybe from my side, about finished vehicle logistics in the context of this conference. We've already heard a number of adjectives from some of our speakers, polite adjectives, but nonetheless recognizing that maybe there's some ways to go. Martin Corner kicked up the conference yesterday, saying that it was time to come out of the Stone Age and adjust to the flexible, electrified, digital world that we're fast moving towards. Greg Henniger from Lucid, also made some reference to aspects of the sector which can be dinosaurs, and I think we also had Charles Franklin from Glovis talking about it being a bit antique in some places. So that does sound lovely and quaint, but we know that there's parts where we want to move faster. But I think that a lot of recognition should also be given to the sector, given its flexibility, ability to survive, and actually stay quite competitive as well. But it's very exciting now that we're going to be looking more into the real-time sorts of visibility and data that we just heard about, from Monica, moving more electric vehicles, a lot more consideration for sustainability and reducing emissions, and of course all the other transformations that we see happening in the sector. And that's the sort of backdrop, if you like, to some of the discussion that we're going to have now. And so I'd like to welcome our panel. So welcoming back, of course, Monica Schmickler, Worldwide Transport Logistics Head of Strategy of Purchasing and Quality for Daimler, but now also welcoming to join us on the stage is Anna Weimers, Head of Global Outbound Logistics Strategy and Engineering for Volvo Cars. Hello, Anna, welcome. And I'm also happy to have with us Frank Schnelle, who's the Director of the Unit for Finished Vehicle Logistics at Glovis Europe, of course, a key provider and arm for Hyundai Motor Group, but also a 3PL in its own right. So it gives us an interesting balance of players here. So welcome to all of you. So glad that you can join us, connect with us digitally in this time. Let's start with some of the key lessons that I wouldn't say we're coming out of the crisis. No one's pretending we're out of the crisis yet, but we've been through certainly some rough points of it with shutdowns and restarts and adjustments. I thought it would be really a good place to start is just to get a sense of what some of the key lessons are for your companies, specifically for vehicle logistics, if there are any, and we'll use that to jump off. So maybe I can start with you, Anna, from Volvo Cars' point of view.
I would say the key for our success was the very close collaboration with our carriers and with our markets out there on a daily basis. So the close collaboration really made us successful in those very difficult times.
So a lot more communication, switching that almost, as you said, to almost a daily kind of collaboration as opposed to what you had before.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Frank, what about from Glovis' point of view?
Yeah, I can really say Anna's completely right. We had more communication than ever among all the stakeholders, factory, distributors, our suppliers, and I must say it worked very well. And many things are now moving on, which were really for years and weeks not possible. So it changed already a lot. And I must say what particularly I'm very happy about is our people, because it was really a great job what they had to manage, especially from the factory outlet in communication with all the stakeholders. And what we can see, and I'm very proud of, is that business is not only assets, it's about people. And that was my lessons learned, that I can really rely on our people and the stakeholders in the chain.
Absolutely, and that's a message that's coming across many times throughout our event and conversations. And Monica, would you add anything from this as well? Obviously, we just heard about this particular system, but what about some wider lessons from Daimler's point of view?
even if it sounds like repetition, maybe it's also a sum of what Anna and Frank said, because I can underline everything they have just communicated also for us. And what I'm happy about is the fact that it continues also in the moment, and hopefully we keep up this close communication, which was intensified between our organization and our partners, and also our teams. I mean, my colleagues in operations are doing a great job, also their teams there. And we are very thankful that they were willing to go this extra mile. Also, I mean, working virtually from at home, which is an extra stress on the whole situation. Yeah. I think we made the best out of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from my side, I always do observe the flexibility of the sector. I mean, in some ways, I know there's areas we want to be more flexible, but again, it's a very able to respond pretty quickly. I think that's fair when we talk about vehicle logistics. But I want to pick up on one of the big topics of this event, and Anna, I'm going to start with you as well, because it's something that Martin Corner and I were also discussing yesterday, of course, and that is on the electric vehicle ramp-ups. And I just wanted to, with you, zero in, and obviously with our panel too, zero in a little bit more on some of the really important considerations from an outbound network and process point of view to really prepare for this ramp up, because it's here for Volvo. It's literally starting to roll off the line and into the ports. So, you know, what does the network really need to be prepared for?
I mean, we're moving into new business models. We have electrification coming. So, I mean, we have big challenges in front of us. And as Martin said yesterday, we're coming from like a Stone Age or very not very modern platform. So we have big challenges, definitely. So, I mean, speed is key, of course. Speed to market. Sustainability is key, but also, of course, to have a cost-efficient setup. And when we talk about the electrification, of course, a lot of investment is needed out at the network.
And would you point to any particular areas where you kind of need to see it happen at pace, whether that's, you know, charging points in the facilities or in the carrier base? So, you know, just if there's any examples you'd like to point to there.
I mean, infrastructure for charging is key, and to make sure that our electrical vehicles are moving fast. That's but then, of course, we need to be able to support these new business models that we're facing. Digital tools is key. So that's an area needed where our partners out there need to invest even more.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're definitely going to turn a bit more to that. But maybe I'll turn to you, Frank. Clearly, in some of your key customers and that you handle, there's already some EVs, including produced in Europe, some that imported, and we also just, of course, from Kia have some announcements of more pure EVs to come. So clearly, this is also going to be a focus there. What from your point of view is key?
Well, definitely. So we have a range, a product of Hyundai and Kia to come up, but also not limited to EVs, but we also have since a couple of years the Nexo, which is a hydrogen car, which has also a special intention. But in general, it does not concern us too much to transport EV cars instead of the normal engines. What is a massive change might be the volume, and then, as Anna said, is more the compounds, the ports, which require infrastructure to maintain mainly the batteries. So this is, I think, the key challenge what we will face, that the handling points are equipped well to maintain, let's say, our products.
Monica, would you add anything to that? I mean, Daimler obviously has the EQ range. There's quite a bit already coming out of China too. That's ramping up in Europe.
Of course, as Anna mentioned, the charging points in the network are, of course, important. But I would like to focus on the challenge that we have an impact of the EVs on the loading factor due to the fact that the cars are more heavy than the others, and this reduces in the classical transportation equipment the loading factor. So we need more transportation volume. And I'm curious to see how our partners will react to that and how we will come up with some innovations on that. Of course, I mean, I'm not talking about aluminium. Yeah, it's a challenge because yeah, I mean, you have a small loading factor, need more trucks on the street, and then we have the CO2 aspect and the transportation. So
it's a critical point, both from a business, obviously from a business operating point of view, but as you just raised on the sustainability side, it would be poor PR at best for electric vehicles to have an unsustainable supply chain. You know, maybe I turn to Frank on that one perhaps in part because of your role in Glovis, having a bit of a unique view there. You own assets as well, and so what are some of the approaches you're looking at to handle that issue?
So it has always been a bit our main comments on capacity. So of course we are eager and we want to have enough capacity. But from our point of view, we also should first focus on the utilization of the existing capacity. So we are talking, of course, of trucks. Yeah, the network is quite easy, and suppliers among share capacity and loads. But when it comes to rail, I see the big potential here in the rail utilization. So, I mean, Monica knows quite well how many block trains they shuttle, let's say, to Bremerhaven as the main export point.
Yeah.
But they all return, not all, but the majority return empty. So I think our challenge here is before we push suppliers to investment, and as we are part of, let's say, as we own Adampool, we are asset operator. Of course, we have, you can always demand to invest in capacity. But I would like to see that we can share capacity, to see what is our network, how we can align the network to make a rail utilization much better, because the empty loads on this equipment is pretty high. And here, I think we could really get more on rail, which then we have two factors. We have a solution for the higher weight of the EVs. It's more eco-friendly. We have also a nice benefit where we are looking for the cost. So this has been always our approach to look into this on top. Needless to say that, of course, the equipment needs to be always adapted. But here, I think, let's check first what we have in the market and try to make it better than today.
That's a really interesting point there. I think on collaborating, combining the network. Again, Anna, when we spoke with Martin yesterday, we talked a little about it almost from an inbound point of view, maybe the potential to have shared consolidation points, if you like, platforms for OEMs, for some of the batteries and other materials moving through. Are you looking at as well already, as Frank alluded to there on the outbound side, in terms of, getting better asset utilization across the network together with other OEMs, for example?
I mean, the key to this first is to collaborate with our LSPs out there for them to combine our loads with our competitors. I mean, yeah, we need to understand better how our competitors' networks look like to be able to design the right network so that we can have full loads in both directions. So we're reaching out to our LSPs out there to help us designing this future network.
It might not be as much of an issue in Europe, but it came up yesterday, actually, Frank, with your colleague in the US on the rail side. I mean, this is particular to North America, I think, but there were some worries that some EVs wouldn't fit on the different bi-level, tri-level configurations because of whether lower or high, so the different with the dimensions. As is not a particular tri-level fleet, if you like, in Europe in that side, as far as I'm aware. But you mentioned that you'd adjust the equipment, but do you see any risk there too, that in terms of the rail assets that we might have some dimensional issues too?
Well, in Europe, it might be. It depends, of course, on the weight, but maybe also on the dimension. So some other British manufacturer with big cars required to invest in these kind of equipment, which is fine. Let me shortly reply to Anna, because that was quite interesting. Of course, I truly agree that suppliers, that's the job of the suppliers, to make the efficiency in the network. And for truck, it works very well. But in terms of rail, we have a bit a different situation, because the rail provider who provides the equipment, they cannot really adjust the network. But this is the way, or the moment where we, as the one who create the network, we are the ones who can potentially review our network, which can be aligned with Volvo Cars importing, and where we export, let's say, or Daimler. Copper is one of your export areas. It's our main part to Europe. So there are a lot of opportunities for checking what is feasible, but this is which we cannot hand over to the supplier, because they do not know. They cannot influence your network. They cannot really influence our network. It's our demand, and then this level, I think, is something where not to leave the competition and so on. Of course, that's pretty much clear, but I think we need to support, to check on our side what is feasible and where we are more flexible to change into the rail.
Monica, is that also something that rings true for you, appealing in that sense, from that sense of getting the providers to collaborate more across the OEMs?
Yes, this is due to many reasons. One being also the fact that I spent a lot of my professional life in procurement, and I'm a fan of bundling volumes and defining the demand accordingly. But coming to your suggestion, Frank, and also frankly speaking, we have tried that in the past. Also with a partner from the south of Germany, but there are some antitrust limits. So our creativity in the combination, or in combining our networks and using common or joint transportation capacities have their limits. But nevertheless, I'm also a fan of trying again, and maybe talking also to other partners. But the main message is that this needs to be done in a very structured and also transparent way, so not to create more hassle than benefits. So it's again about communication and dialogue, and of course also finding the right moment. Because it was also a finding of our projects that we as OEMs we have multi-year contracts with our partners. So you need to synchronize your contractual framework in order to break out from a contract, go into a new one. And this was also a limit in this, or limitation in this creativity process.
Fantastic. So Anna, earlier on, you mentioned, you stressed the importance of speed and also digitalization for finished vehicle, logistics. What for Volvo right now? What is some areas that you really are targeting with your partners to improve that? Whether it's the visibility side in your network. Are you investing in some new systems and processes to do that? Or if you can shed any light on that.
I mean, we are really reaching out to our LSPs out there to be able to explain our strategy, where we are aiming to go. And then we encourage them to share their strategies and together come up with good solutions for the future. So, I mean, the experience and competence is really out there at the LSPs. So how can they help us out, and how can we be more transparent in telling what we need for the future? To be a bit more concrete, yes, we do need networks that are ready for electrical vehicles. We need to have better speed. We might look into new services that we need in the network, like PDI, PDS services, for example. In the future, we're looking into more subscription models, of course. So how would we have a network ready for being able to take cars back, refurbish them, and send them out again in a second week? So that's really the questions that we are elaborating on right now.
Okay, that obviously that raises an interesting point. That, I mean, you mentioned the subscriptions, and we've seen, partly as a product of COVID, some acceleration on the digital sales side of things. I mean, China was a big example, but we saw it some parts of Europe as well. And I know, sorry to keep that on you for a moment, Anna, but I know it's something that, as you alluded to, that is a particular ambition for Volvo too, especially as more electric vehicles are rolled out. So that's interesting. So you're thinking of PDI, PDS, perhaps PDS service changing. What other impacts might that have on your finished vehicle logistics network?
I mean, it's to shorten the lead time to the consumer, to probably do part of the PDI, PDS in the supply chain already, to have short delivery time to the consumer. That's the main idea about that.
Mm-hmm. And for Frank first, perhaps, are you also seeing within, are you seeing any changes in the network or increases in the online sales, and what that requires from you in vehicle logistics on the network side?
So we basically expect indeed that due to the customer expectation, quick deliveries, like an Amazon product, I'm not quite sure whether it will be really that demanding, but definitely the attitude of the consumers seems to change. And I think this gives opportunities for us as a supplier on one hand, and some challenges. What might change if the sales channel is changed, it does not really reflect to our business. But if the handover point is changing and the dealer is maybe not anymore the one providing the vehicle to the customer, then this is transferred to the driver. And I think this is quite interesting. If we talk about then home delivery, I think Volvo had an attempt to it. Daimler did it 20 years ago for used cars already. And again,
yeah, we did it again.
Sorry. But for sure, this is coming up. So as maybe listen to the media, Genesis, our Hyundai luxury brand, will enter next year, and they have also some ambitious ideas in terms of the experience to receive a car. So we are definitely see this as an upcoming challenge, which means we need to have maybe urbanization compounds, technical centers more in the vicinity of metropole regions. And definitely this is something where the customer at the end of the final consumer at the end will decide which way it will go. But I think experience have been made, and it's really challenging, it's really different. And we are working on it. In fact, it will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean that all outlines some pretty exciting changes. Monica, at Daimler, is that also, does that echo with your experience so far and how you're looking at that potential?
It does, and sorry, Frank, for interrupting you, but yeah, our partner who did it 20 years ago, he told me that we already had this attempt to deliver the cars to our customers directly to their front door. And yes, we had a pilot this spring for Germany, and we have some test markets in Europe where we have some trials for new sales models. And of course, I and my colleagues in procurement, but of course the planning colleagues are involved in order to shape this transportation network, which is different to the present one. Leaner and of course faster. And I also agree, Frank, what you said, that we might have this change from all the services areas into the metropolitan areas, where the services are then being required.
And I mean, with Anna, what you referred to as well with the subscription models, of course, I appreciate they're all in relatively small mode right now, but that if Volvo has more responsibility or control, if you like, of that, then that's also perhaps a much more interactive customer service too, where you'd potentially be looping the vehicles back and perhaps having aspects of service. So, I mean, is that something you're looking at right now? Whether you would potentially do it, or together with your service providers? Is this kind of a completely different model in that way, wouldn't it?
Definitely, and that's something we're looking into. But the biggest challenge, I would say, is how to industrialize such a system. Because, of course, I mean, the system that we have today, it's where we have full truckloads of cars. How do you make it efficient to transport cars to the consumer and taking the car back and so on? I mean, that's an area where we need to elaborate on together with our partners that we have today.
Right. You know, it's we've mentioned a few times here, obviously, on the capacity and potential for investment. But of course, not to put too fine a point on it, I think it's fair to say that the carrier base is not in a, well, they're struggling like everyone, and perhaps have struggled even more during this crisis, given the shutdowns and the low margins to begin with. So I wondered, how are you looking to, partner with them to work through this sort of, to talk through that phase of either investment or implication for rates, etc. It can't be an easy, conversation to particularly have at this time. Can I start with you on that, Frank?
Me? Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think first of all, and I have to say that during the crisis, so it was really a good collaboration. I mentioned before in the beginning, but indeed it really applies also to the supplier. Of course, it's a very difficult time to overcome. So we very much appreciate how quick and how flexible we could organize this challenge. Of course, at the end of the day, if there's no volume to transport, and we can do a lot. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, if we suffer the production or the sales, and in this particular case, then it's really limit focus for us, or limit possibilities to support, in fact.
Can imagine. Is anything different from other? I mean, Anna, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you're right. I mean, that's really the challenge that we see today. But I mean, if we talk about future and investment and so on, I mean, we as an OEM are investing in our products and our systems. So we of course reaching out to our partners for them to invest in this future. In their processes and their tools. So that's really what we're asking for.
So in a way, to kind of give them some confidence, if you like, to say this is the product plans from Volvo, from Daimler. If you come with us, then you will gain too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we need to be more transparent in our strategy and where we are heading, and then of course we rely on our partners to do the needed investments for that.
That sort of raises a topic for me that's come up in a couple of our sessions, and that is on the kind of forward planning side, and at what point vehicle logistics can come into that too, whether even as far back as R&D, for example. So Monica, maybe if I can turn to you on that. You also have had experience in the past in R&D on the purchasing side, but in terms of looking ahead and planning and getting the outbound planners involved and even the carriers involved really early.
Yeah. Although, Chris, as a head of procurement, I'd rather answer.
Yeah, please, yeah, just a reference.
But, at the time, yeah, being involved as a logistic partner in the early stage in the development of a car is something we have really pushed on in here the Daimler side, and also implemented it due to many reasons. So one being also the fact that we don't want to have only great shaped cars with a lot of electronics, etc. We also want them, as I said in my prior presentation this afternoon, to be transported in the best way possible to the customer. And we really made the experience that we had some challenges when it came to the size, because in the size didn't fit to the equipment in the market, and to synchronize these requirements at an early stage is very useful, especially now, Anna, when we talk about electric vehicles. Also here we are part of the project team, and this is a novelty. It wasn't the case in former times. And I think it's important to have a seat at the, or chair at the table, because then it pays off in the future.
Absolutely.
But
So,
it's really something, sorry to say this, we had to fight for, because of course when you have many cooks and you also want to contribute, but at least we raised the question, or we showed the problem, and we are aware of that.
yeah. I'm sure that there's not too many engineers who want to be told that something can't happen because of the way something fits on a truck or something. But nonetheless, there are some really important considerations here, and then that weigh upon the customer experience too, which shouldn't really be underestimated there. Not least the cost side too, as I'm sure in purchasing you more than what.
Yeah, it's correct, because as you say, customer experience, of course, we have also cars where the customer takes his car on a train when he goes to a remote island from Italy. And having combined these efforts, because our engineers did their tests and we in transportation did our tests for loading the vehicles on a train. And the sheer fact of combining these activities at the early stage, it might seem very banal or very simple, but it was a major step in improving the situation.
And Anna, I mean, again, for Volvo and perhaps even in the wider, some of the wider group there, Polestar, for example, coming into that. I mean, has this kind of worked better together now in terms of the earlier planning and building in considerations also for outbound?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Monica, we are also looking at how we more involved in the early stages. At least to be able to explain what will require, or what will lead to an extra cost in the end in the vehicle distribution. So to be able to display what different decisions will have an impact on distribution chain. Of course, there are so many considerations to take into account, but at least that we should be really part of that consideration in early stage.
Absolutely. If we, the age-old issue of visibility, the real-time aspects which the industry aspires to, and doesn't always achieve. How do you? I mean, we tend to say it in a way that, we're not there, we can't do what Amazon does, et cetera, but are we seeing, can we, or are we starting to? I mean, Frank, from your side, have you seen major strides in this side? I mean, there's telematics possibilities, there's a whole lot of things. I think we had a great presentation from ECG and Odette and Renault Nissan yesterday about new standards in this. So are we further along than we sometimes give ourselves credit for?
Well, what I really think is that we have a game changer coming up, and I think maybe Volvo is a pretty well established already in that way. So I think the game changer which we have and will face in the industry is the car connectivity. So the car will be the one providing the data and the messages and the visibility. So we can talk about nowadays OEMs may claim they don't have the visibility as the supplier, but will be vice versa. In future, you as an OEM, we will know much better everything rather than the supplier. So I think the visibility is potentially some kind of short-term situation, which will change with the car connectivity. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. And so Anna, we just referenced obviously maybe the connectivity even in your products are pretty advanced now. Is that something you're already using and making more use of in the distribution chain?
I mean, we're starting to look at how to use it, because the software and hardware is there in our cars already. So how can we actually use that data and visualize it in our phones? That's definitely a key area for the future that we're starting to look into.
Starting to do that now. And of course, Monica, Mercedes-Benz is very connected. So is that already similar, though? It's still something it's building up.
It's building up, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So let's we touched on this earlier. Frank alluded to it with the potentially rail as a solution for when EV volumes go up as a mode that can grow. Are you even besides the electrification side of it? Are you looking to increase multimodal transport flows in your networks? Perhaps we can focus on Europe for the moment, and obviously if you have a global view that you want to share. But in Europe, for example, Monica, if I can start with you. Is that been an objective and something you're starting to achieve?
Yes, actually, we already achieved it. We have a project where we bundled volumes which classically went by truck to the southern parts of Europe, to Spain, to Italy, and to France. And we started with Spain. So we called it the Rail to Med project, which was successfully implemented in March 2018 already, but initiated by my predecessor, by Egon Quist. He's well known in the in the world of finished vehicle logistics. So and it showed to be worthwhile to look also at other areas and also to expand this multimodal way of transportation.
And Anna, for Volvo, I mean, perhaps especially as Volvo's volumes increase and have increased, okay, the crisis pause aside, but in general, more production, more import-export flows than in the past, have you also been able to therefore increase rail and multimodal? Oh, just 1 second, Anna, you're on mute. That's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability is really at the heart of our purpose. It's a key area for us. So yes, we're looking into multimodal solution both in Europe but also between China and Europe. So that's really an area that we are building continuously upon. But I mean,
sorry, Anna, did you say between Scandinavia and Europe or between China and Europe?
Between China and
okay, that's the key difference.
Yeah, and I mean, capacity is key. So we're struggling there from time to time, and cost of course is also an area where we see an improvement need. And talking about China, it's still not allowed to transport electric vehicles by train in China. So that's really a challenge for us for the future because we want to continuously using train.
Yeah, it is. We've been picking up on that issue that it was supposed to have changed, I believe, in the regulations, but seems not to have happened. And so you need other solutions within China with the EV side. So that is a key issue indeed. Frank, maybe just to hear from you on this as well, because obviously you use a fair amount of rail, but wondering if it's been able to increase in certain places and shifting modes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a general aim, especially if we look at the factory transportation within Europe. So we made changes a couple of years ago. We changed also to Spain by rail and ship via Copa. That was a great success, despite the lead time, but visibility helps and prioritization helps. So we moved UK volume through Gdansk. This is the nearest port. In the outbound of the factory, of course, this is what we aim to do. What we look into is how we can utilize the rail in the distribution. So this is pretty much from port to direct dealer distribution, and here maybe we can utilize much more, as I mentioned earlier, the existing capacity in the ports or in any of the other compounds for return cargo. And I think this is what we are really look into in future too.
Fantastic. We just had we've had a couple of questions pop on to the chat here. We're running a bit low on time, but I'll try and hit a few of them whilst we have about 5 minutes. One is a general question, but anyone wants to take it. What are the main considerations when selecting an LSP from an OEM perspective? And we know cost, quality, service play big roles in this, but I guess perhaps maybe something to add on to that is not just now, but for the future, because clearly we're talking about some changes in the network too. So Anna, when you think about key logistic service providers and considerations over the next 5 years, for example? What to you really will stand out?
And being able and prioritizing investments needed for the future. Development of new services that we are asking for the future. So that's really key. But also to be transparent in our discussions on how we can do things better. I mean, how they could use their knowledge to actually find good solutions together with us. I would say that's key. So, the ability to work in partnerships.
Yeah, and as you say, with some transparency on what their plans are and how they can support yours. Monica, from your point of view.
And I represent the procurement side here, and I'm the partner of my planning colleagues, helping them to find the best partners in order to ensure a smooth operation in the distribution of the finished vehicle cars. And so the requirements come from my partners. However, we as procurement, we also, of course, we look at quality, cost, and performance, but also sticking to the labor laws. I mean, buzzword is corporate social responsibility is something also very important to not only to me personally, but also to us as Daimler as a corporation. And other than that, I think it's always helpful for a partnership to have this open communication, which we stressed at the very beginning of our session today, but also stable, high-level performance, where we as a partner can rely on, of course, combined with the flexibility, which was also delivered this spring when we had this special situation.
Yeah, indeed.
So this is the perfect frame.
Frank, anything you'd want to add to that?
Well, I mean, we are both. We are have a purchase, of course, of suppliers when it comes to our international transports and some distribution, but at the same time, we also, of course, truck and asset operator in various roads. So, yeah, the challenge in procurement, in fact, is not to get the cheapest, because that is easy. What I think is the challenge is to get the most sustainable one, who can work with a rate. Of course, we all have an interest to identify the lowest cost, but there's also a bit risk. And now I think it comes now with a crisis, and being currently in the purchase procurement process, in fact, is we need the capacity alive. So we do not want to have a similar situation we had maybe 20 years ago when a big supplier in the German market disappeared and capacity was out. And the worst thing, what can happen is that we create too much pressure and cost and rates to the supplier. And at the end of the day, we don't have the capacity to transport our products. So it's really, I would say, a challenge to find the right balance of a real good, available price.
It's a key point, and actually, you perhaps save the panel from answering a question that came in that goes in that direction. I'll read it out, and I think just so that because it's getting votes here, and that was pretty much to your point, Frank. Transport rates are going down. There are new needs in terms of equipment, driver training, and there's a lack of drivers. So our OEMs are aware of the upcoming quality drop, and I think it's a warning at least. I think your point there alludes to what needs to happen from the OEM side to help prevent that, and to not just choose the cheapest because there's a cost. The cheapest can come with other costs and things. So I think it's a good point. Obviously, someone, I think we're running a bit low on time, so I won't ask everyone to comment on that now. I'll choose a last question here from the audience to close with, and it goes back a little bit to something we talked about earlier. And it's about reducing empty miles. So this should really be the target in many ways to address sustainability. And so basically, it's our OEMs ready for that and looking at real solutions to do that. So I think it is a key point. We talked about it earlier. Collaboration is an element of it. But maybe there's other tools as well, network planning tools, other ways we can optimize the network. So Anna, is that something that in your team as well you're really concerned about and looking at?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are right now planning for the network. So, of course, making sure that our current network is efficient enough in terms of both quality and sustainability, but also then looking into the future network and then putting all of this into account, all the new business models, electric vehicles, last mile to consumer, and so on. How do we make that efficient as a whole? So, one network carrying all of these aspects needs to be, I would say, a waste. I mean, cost efficient and sustainable. So that's the challenge that we have. So of course we need tools to be able to design that network in the best possible way.
Frank, from your side?
Well, I fully agree. I think this is the main points. We need to take the new challenge in terms of the customer demands and to see how disruptive this crisis is. And I think, or most probably, no one knows exactly what will come out of the crisis. So currently it seems to be well, but I think the big wave may come.
And any final closing thoughts on that, Monica?
I would like to close with the beginning that maybe commenting on Frank's statement that from my opinion, only with this close collaboration and communication with our partners, we can overcome the challenges of the future, which is still unclear, blurred. Of course, we try to foresee it and we work with data, but yeah, we need to monitor it. It's I mean,
it is open. It is an open exchange, absolutely. So a key. I think that's certainly a key aspect which has come out of this discussion and many aspects of our event. And Anna alluded to it too, as a key consideration in future providers is an open and transparency about their plans. It needs to go both ways, of course, from the OEM side too, and empty miles become part of that too. So thanks so much to Frank Schnelle, to Anna Weimers, to Monica Schmickler for your time and insight here and asking our questions. I had to leave some more questions and comments from the chat, but we'll certainly look to raise those and feed them. There was a comment about collaborating with Tesla in Berlin, so I'll leave you guys to think about that when over the break and stuff. But for so thanks again so much. It was really fascinating insight from all of you. For our audience, right after this coming up, there's a special analyst session looking at North America as our North American market wakes up at this time, looking at some forecasts and change in developments and how that will impact the supply chain. And then throughout the afternoon, you're going to want to stick with the afternoon in Europe, the morning in North America and the Americas. We've got a whole lot of interesting sessions coming up, including some senior level logistics providers from the likes of Nissan and Volvo coming back too as well. And we'll close the day with an interview with the CEO at Yazaki, a major tier supplier in Europe and North America. So we've got so much coming up. Don't miss it. In the meantime, enjoy the networking. You'll be able to catch up on the sessions on demand, and we'll see you real soon. So thanks again to all. Signing off here in London.
Thank you.